Well, I want to read the whole 16th chapter to begin with, and then we're going to go to 16:14. But I want to read and review what's happening here in this chapter. I'll be reading this from the Amplified Bible. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, bore him no children. She had an Egyptian maid whose name was Hagar. This Egyptian maid was not a maid, was she? She was originally a political marriage. She's Pharaoh's daughter by a concubine, and he gave his daughter to Abraham for a political ally. But he turns her into a slave and gives her to his wife. So that's the background of this story right there. And Sarah said to Abram, "See here, the Lord has restrained me from bearing, and I am asking you to have intercourse with my maid, and it may be that I may obtain children by her." And Abram listened and heeded to Sarai what Sarai said. So Sarah, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her Egyptian maid, which now they had turned her from a princess into a slave. After Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband, Abram, to be his secondary wife. And he had intercourse. Actually, it says he kept on having intercourse with Hagar, and she became pregnant. And when she saw that she was with child, she looked with contempt upon her mistress and despised her. Now, this is a little misconception here in some ways. The mistress was Sarah, but Sarah hated her. Sarah was very mad. And Sarah said to Abram, "May the responsibility for my wrong and deprivation of rights be upon you." Now she starts attacking Abraham. Word Sarah means what, Pamela?
One who wrestles.
Sarah means contentious and fighting. Okay, she fought and she was contentious. Means to argue, to war. "And may wrong and deprivation of her rights be upon you. And I gave my maid into your bosom, and when she saw that she was with child, I was contemptible and despised in her eyes, and the Lord be the judge between you and me." Now, this was her idea, but first of all, she wants to show Abraham that he's the one that is having the problem, not her. Well, we find out that Abraham wasn't having any trouble about getting anybody pregnant at all. This girl gets pregnant. So now Abraham, or Sarah, knows absolutely that it is her fault that they're not having children, because God has closed her womb. And Abraham said to Sarah, "See here, your maid is in your hands and power, so do as you please with her." Now the young princess, now she's just a common slave. Can you imagine that? Raised in the palace of Pharaoh, and now she's a common slave. The girl has no rights over her body or her destiny whatsoever. And when Sarah dealt severely with her, humbling and afflicting her, Hagar fled from Sarah. She is beating her up, slapping her around. You know how that is. Somebody to beat on you and to slap you around and to constantly bemean you. And that's what happened to Hagar. Now we have Jehovah, the angel of the Lord, found her by a spring of water in the wilderness on the road to Shur. And he said, "Hagar, Sarah's maid, where do you come from, and where are you intending to go?" And she said, "I am running away from my mistress Sarah." Now, what had she done to her? She had beat her, slapped her around, and verbally abused her. Because she was jealous. She was jealous. Because she knew God had actually shut her womb. And God proved it by letting this girl get pregnant by Abram. And the angel of the Lord said to her, "Go back to your mistress and humbly submit to her control." Also the angel of the Lord said to her, "I will multiply your descendants exceedingly, so that they shall not be numbered for multitude." He's going to bless her, the fruit of her womb. And the angel of the Lord continued, "See now, you are with child, and shall bear a son, and you shall call his name" what? What's that Ishmael mean? You remember that, Pamela? Ishmael. Brother Roger? God hears, because God heard her prayers. That is, God hears because the Lord has heard and paid attention to your affliction. "And Ishmael shall be a wild ass." He'll be like a wild donkey. Marilyn, you know what wild donkeys are like. They come at you with all their ivory showing in their heels, too. "Among men, his hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against himself. And this is the father of much of the Arab race. Ishmael and Keturah's children were the ones that made up the Arab race. And they are killing each other and fighting each other all the time. And he shall live by the east and the border of his kinsmen. And though she called the name of the Lord, she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her, You are a God of seeing, for she said, I have not even here in the wilderness looked after him who sees me and live. Now, what is she saying? This is Jehovah Jireh. The Lord saw. The Lord my shepherd is what she said. The Lord is my shepherd. Before David wrote those words, Hagar quoted those words, the Lord my shepherd. And the shepherd means the one who watches after me, or one who watches after the sheep or the goats, who sees me and lived. And I have here also seen the future purpose or designs of him who sees me. Therefore, the well called Be'er Lahaoroi, that is, a well to the living one who sees me, who watches after me. It is between Kadesh and Bered. And Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram called the name of his son, whom Hagar bore Ishmael. God hears. Now let's go to, let's go back to 16:14. Now we want just a little bit further than what I wanted to. Brother Roger, let's review just a little bit of Hebrew grammar. How many Hebrew tenses are there? How many? 7. 7, the number of perfection. 7 Hebrew tenses. 7 Hebrew tenses. All right. And what is the doggish laney? Okay, it makes a hard pronunciation of it like ta, ta, instead of tha. Okay? Okay, what is the doggish 40?
So that's the other words.
Okay, and it doubles. It doubles the vowel. It goes hob-bod, hob-bod. All right? So it doubles it. And we have the 7 vowel stems, the 7 vowels, wherever they are here. We have the kal stem, or kal stem, which is a simple active, he killed. Katal, it means he killed. That's the simple active. The simple passive, he was killed. The nifal. We have the intensive PL stem, he killed and murdered brutally. Verse number 4, the intensive passive, he was killed and murdered brutally. The intensive reflexive, he killed and brutally killed himself. And the causative active, he was caused to kill. That's the hifel. And then we have hofel, the causative passive, he was caused to kill. So we have call, nephal, pl, pual, hithbael, hifil, and hofil. Those are the vowel stems. And it's always good to just look at them and remind, because now we're going to go see how they work. As we translate, we'll see how they're put together and how they work. All can kara lab be'er. Do you see the doggish 40 in that, Brother Roger? What does it do? It doubles. It doubles the bait. Lab be'er. Lab be'er. Be'er. Lahe. Roy. Hine. Ben. Kadesh. Yuvan. Bared. What's in the middle of that bait and that bared, Brother Roger? A doggish laney. Doggish laney. And the other one up there is doggish 40. Doggish 40 doubles the sound. A doggish laney makes it hard. All can, literally, it is upon thus, is what it says there. But therefore, or because upon. She called, third person masculine singular, cal perfect. All right. Called, kara. He had called well to the well. La be'er. Well means a spring or a flowing spring. Remember we showed you the place there in Fish Lake Valley where I live up there on that creek. That If you go up there in the mountains far enough, you will find that that comes out of the ground. It is that stream, the Davis Creek, Chattovich Creek, and Middle Creek, it just runs out. I can take you to the place where it comes out of the ground. Of course, there's snow melting too, but it just runs out of the ground. It just comes out of the ground. And that's what you call a be'er, a spring. I can take you to Crooked Creek and Wyman Creek, and you'll see the same thing. The spring just comes out of the ground. I can take you to the headwaters of those springs. That's what this be'er is. Be'er. Every one of those creeks. Maryland, I can take you up there to the top of Trail Creek, and I can show you where it runs out of the ground. It just begins right there. To see a spring like this be'er is very beautiful. And she called the well, the spring, the flowing spring. This is what we call an artesian well, a be'er. To the living one, or to living one, seeing me. To the living one, seeing me. Look at that word, lahe. Lahe. See that word, lahe? That comes from chaya. Remember? That means life. The living one, the everlasting one, the always one. In John 1:1 it says, in arche ein ho logos. In beginning kept on being the ho logos, which is the Jehovah, and the Jehovah kept on being an inseparable part of the Godhead because he kept on being God. The one seeing me, my shepherd. Behold, hene, be'en means between. That means an interval of space. Between me, Kadesh, all right, Kadesh, and between Bered, Bered. Kadesh and Bered. The word Kadesh there means what? Kadesh. You remember what Kadesh means? Marilyn, you know what Kadesh means? It means holy. It means separate. It's like the word hagios in Greek. It means purified, pure. Between the holy place and Bered. The Bered means a place in the heart. A place in the heart. This means Bered means a place in the heart. A place in the heart. It's about 12 miles south of Beersheba. A place in the heart. It also means a seed place, where something grows from, the heart of it, the heart of a seed. In the heart of a seed is what? Chaya. In the heart of a seed is chaya. They have found wheat in the Pharaoh's temples, in the pyramids, that are 6,000 and 7,000 years old, and they take that wheat out there and put it in the sunshine and put a little water on it, and guess what happens? The chaya comes forth, and it sprouts forth, and it has life. The life was dormant there, but it was always there. You take any seeds, and you put water and sunlight on them, and they will have life. When God reconstructed the earth in Genesis, the first chapter, the seeds that were in the ground, he caused them to sprout because he gave them life-giving water and light. They were already there. The plants were already there from the first creation. We have the creation that was, the creation that is, and the creation that shall be. In the end there, we will have the earth reconstructed again in the millennial reign, but it won't be changed totally. It's going to be reconstructed. The topography of the land is going to change. If you read there in Isaiah and Ezekiel, you'll find out about the land changing, and in the Psalms. But in the future earth, it's going to be renewed. It's going to be purified totally. And not one man-made object will be left in eternity. All salvation is by grace. No man-made object will go into eternity. So what do we have here? John the 10th chapter, the Lord is my shepherd. Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd. Let's go to Psalm 23. And let's see what David said later about this term. Psalm 23. If I can find it in this little old Bible. That's one of the most quoted passages in the world. No passage of Scripture has ever been quoted more than this one, except maybe John 3:16. People that don't even believe in God, they will read this verse. The Lord is my roeh, Jehovah roeh. The Lord is my shepherd, to feed and guide and shield me, and I shall not lack. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still and restful waters. Sheep will not drink from running water. You could take sheep up there to Chattahoochee Creek and they would not drink unless you took them to a pond where it was still. Because they're afraid of the water. They're afraid something's going on. And so they are very timid animals, but they would go in there and drink in those ponds on Chattahoochee Creek. But when it runs, it scares them. There's an old story about Don Lopez. That was the foreman of the Tejon Ranch. That he took sheep all the way from Tejon Ranch and took them up into Montana, Green River, Montana. And he drove them through Fish Lake Valley, where I've lived a lot of my life, and he drove them over Lida Pass, wherever you have been, Maryland, and they took them down to the junction out there, and they didn't have any, once they left Fish Lake Valley, they couldn't find any water, and they were starving to death, and Don Lopez, he took off, and he looked for water. In the meanwhile, there was a stream running down there by where he was, and he told them, he said, go down there and water those sheep, but you'll have to dig a ditch out of the stream and put it into an area where it's calm waters, because they won't drink. The guy that was working with him was supposed to be an expert guide and all this, but he was a liar. And he did not do what he said. And when he came back, the sheep were scattered all over because they're afraid of the water, and they wouldn't drink. And yet they were thirsty, but they wouldn't drink. And when he came back, his horse brought him back to camp, and he had completely fainted from exhaustion, and his dog had guided and was guiding and leading the horse back to camp. Came back to camp barely alive, and the sheep had gone everywhere. So he had to gather all of these thousands of sheep that they took off of the Tejon Ranch right up here behind us. And he took them all the way to Green River, Wyoming. He made it alive. It was an impossible task. Without a guide. You know who helped him? The local Indians. Hank Patterson's family helped him guide where to go and where to get water and things. All right. Psalm 23 and verse 3. And he refreshes and restores my life. Myself, he leads me in the paths of righteousness, not for my earning, but for his name's sake. Yes, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil dread, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff guide me, and they comfort me. The rod and the staff. What was a rod and a staff? Remember what they did with the rod and what they did with the staff? A staff is like a chicken catcher. How many of you ever caught a chicken with a chicken catcher? It's got a crooked end on it. You grab them by the foot. Well, a staff is also what they catch a lamb or a sheep with and hold them. And sometimes when the sheep won't mind, they take the rod and whoop them. They get a whooping. Does God whip us sometimes when we need our whippings? Yes. The staff whips me, the rod whips me and also protects me from my enemies, and the staff catches me and pulls me out of harm. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You feed me right in the presence of my enemies. And out in the mountains up there, in Fish Lake Valley, where these sheep had gone, where Don, he had about 5 names, Don Lopez took them, they were still black wolves. Marilyn, you've seen a black wolf up there in Fish Lake Valley. There's lion and all those things. Sheep have to be protected from them because they are very, a sheep's skin is extremely fragile, isn't it? You can shear them and you can just rip them open by the slightest little thing. And when a wolf or a coyote or a lion gets them, they're just degutted. They're just disemboweled and nothing flat. Because they're so tender, they have to be protected. And we are that tender, and we need protected by our Lord and Savior, don't we? You prepare a table for me. You feed me in the presence of my enemy. You anoint my head with oil. And my cup is running over. Surely only goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. That's her story right there. That's Hagar's story. Hagar's story. Is it your story? Marilyn, is that your story? Have you been abused, and did the Lord bring you through it? Did the Lord comfort you, and the Lord give you nourishment in the presence of your enemies? In the presence of your enemies. 16:15. Wataled, Hagar, Abram, Ben, Wayikra, Abram, Shem, Beno, Asher, Yelidah, Hagar, Yishmael. Now let's, Brother Roger, would you conjugate that verb for me, wataled? Tell me all about it here. Okay?
It starts out with conjunction wa.
Yeah, conjunction wa on the front of it. What did the Germans call that? Ba. What did the modern Hebrews call it? Ba. Okay, but it's wa. Okay.
So it's third person feminine singular.
All right, third person feminine singular. What tells you that's feminine?
The top.
The tau in there. The tau in there tells you it's feminine. Third person feminine singular.
So it's and she bore. And cal, while consecutive and perfect.
Okay.
She bore and kept on bore.
All right, she bore and kept on giving birth, Hagar. In other words, it didn't abort. There wasn't an abortion, but she delivered a live birth. That's what the word yalad means, to deliver and bring forth a live birth. Now, Pamela, you had 2 live births, didn't you? They're still alive, aren't they? All right. To Abram, le. That word le in the front, that's 515. That's a preposition. That's a lamet. Sometimes it makes it into a what, Brother Roger? That lamet. Turns it into an infinitive. All right, right here it's a preposition. All right, a preposition, little preposition, 515. Right, 515 through 18 actually. And then we have Abram. What does Abram mean there, Pamela? What? It means exalted father, exalted father, exalted father, high father, exalted father. And then Ben. What does Ben mean there? Ben. What does that mean? According to a pattern. All right? According to a pattern. Have you ever seen a woman say, oh, that child looks just like me? What do they say? It looks just like the daddy. Just like the daddy. Hopefully. Wayikra. Now let's conjugate that. Marilyn, can you conjugate that one for me? Wayikra.
Third person, masculine, singular. Well, consecutive in third person.
All right. And he called and kept on calling. He called and kept on calling. Abram, the name. That word name there, Shem, means name or monument. Remember, we have Ham, Shem, and Japheth, 3 sons of Noah. Shem was the one through him would come the faith line. Through him would come the Messiah. Name or monument. His son. His named his son, whom, look at that one now, Yelidah, Yelidah, Yelidah. That is third person feminine singular, cal perfect. She had born. She had born Hagar. Ishmael. God is hearing. This child was Abraham's son, but he's a grandson of Pharaoh. Remember, this is a grandson of Pharaoh. The grandson of Pharaoh. Let's go, well, in Jasher, the book of Jasher, the 15th chapter, verses 30 through 32, tells you about this. I did not bring the book of Jasher with me, but it tells you about this very thing, about Hagar being Pharaoh's daughter, and that this child was Pharaoh's grandson, Ishmael. Now let's go to the 16th verse. We Abram, Ben, Shimonim, Shana, Wishesh, Shanim, Bileret, Hagar, Et, Ishmael, Li Abram. And Abram, we Abram. We there is a conjunction. Page 253 in Brown Driver and Briggs. Abram, page 4. Exalted father. A son. A son means according to a pattern, page 120. And then 80 years. Shimonim Shana, 80 years. Wishesh, and 6, which means 86 years. At bearing, here we have Beledet. All right? At bearing. And this one here is Kal infinitive construct. At the bearing of Hagar. Hagar means what, Pamela? Wanderer. All right? Or pilgrim. Because she would become a wanderer and a pilgrim from the rest of her life. And then we have Et, which is a sign of direct object. And then we have Ishmael, which means God has heard. And then to Abram. To Abram. Now we're in the 17th chapter of the book of Bereshit. 17th chapter of the book of Bereshit. Wahi Abram. Ben, Tishim, Shana, Wetasha, Shanim, Wayirah, Hadavar, El Abram, Wayomer, Elah, Ani, El Shaddai, Hit, Halek, Le Paneh, Wehye, Tamin. Wahi. And he became, and kept on becoming, Abram, the son 90. Now he was 90 years old, 90 years and 9. 90 and 9, 99 years old. Years. And now we'll look at his Wayirah, and that's the third person masculine singular Nifel, while consecutive imperfect. And he calls to appear in sight. Third person masculine singular Nifel, while consecutive imperfect. He calls to appear in his sight Jehovah. The word Jehovah there. There is the word Hadavar. We say that Hadavar, but this is the one who shall become. See there, it comes from page 219. Hayah. Unto Abram. Jehovah appears unto Abram. What does Jehovah mean, Pamela? One who shall become. All right, it comes from the to be verb in Greek, in Hebrew that is. Now let's look at this. Wayomer. Wa on the front of that is a conjunction, page 253, and then Yomer, Wayomer, and he said, third person masculine singular, cow, while consecutive imperfect, and he said and kept on saying unto him, Elah, Ani, I, El, I, God, Almighty, El Shaddai, El Shaddai, El Shaddai. What does this word Shad mean there, Brother Roger?
Well, it suggests sustenance like a woman's breast.
Okay, a woman breastfeeds her child. That's what it literally means. So God feeds us. He not only feeds us, but what does a mother chicken, a mother hawk, a mother eagle, or a mother deer, or a mother lion, or bear, or tiger do? They protect their children. They're powerful. El Almighty, El Shaddai. I'm the nourisher and the protector. Then he said here, masculine singular hithel imperative. You walk. You walk and keep on walking. You go to and fro before my face. Le pene. Before my nostrils, before my face. Voyez. And become. Masculine singular cal imperative. And you become. Look at that. Tamim. Tamim. Tamim means spotless. It means blameless. Amamtos is a Septuagint word. All right? Blameless. Sound. You become sound. Was Abraham really sound? Was he? Was he an absolute spotless spiritual leader? No. He never did become that way, did he? But God said, because he believed, that it was imputed unto him for righteousness. And that's the way we are. I am not spotless, I am not clean, except that the Lord looks upon me as that way. I am saved by grace and grace alone. 17 and verse 2. We etana. Beriti. That should be beriti. It's got a thi sound there. Beriti. Bene. Yuvanika. We arbe. O tha. Bemod. Miod. First person construct singular calhorte. We etana. And I shall multiply for my own volition. That's cohortive in meaning, isn't it? Cohorti. Cohorti means what? By volition. God has sovereignty and man has sovereignty. God made man in his sovereign image. He says in Genesis 1:26, let us make man in our shadow-casting spiritual likeness, in our blood-flowing likeness, and in our sovereign likeness. Let him have sovereignty over all the animals, every living thing, including his own soul. First person construct singular, cal cohortive. And I shall make for myself my covenant between me and between you. Yuvanika. Between me and between you. And I shall increase for my own, in my own sovereignty. Again, we have this word cohorti in there. This is sovereignty. You exceedingly. Exceedingly. In exceedingly, exceedingly. I shall multiply you exceedingly, exceedingly. 17 and verse 3. Wayapol, Abram, Al Panah, Waidabar, Ito, Elohim, Lemor. And he fell and kept on falling. Third person masculine singular, Kalwal, consecutive and perfect, Abram, that means exalted father, upon the faces of him. He fell upon him. All of his expressions were of worship now. All of his expressions were of worship. I remember here a while back, Marilyn, you and I sat right here and we prayed that God would give us that place up there on that creek so that we could glorify him with having little seminars and spiritual getaways for people to go and refresh themselves and see. She told me, she said, if we don't get that place, they're not going to come anyplace else up in that valley but on that creek. They will come to see that creek. They will come to see those mountains. And they will come to hear God's Word. And we prayed, and guess what? God gave it to us. God gave it to us. It's His still, but we're using it a little bit right now. He gave it to us. By His sovereignty. We fell upon ourselves and asked our faces, our countenances changed. We were in a state of worship when we asked God for that. And God provided. And he fell and kept on falling, Abram, upon his faces, upon his expressions. His face changed. His face was a face of worship. His face was a face of reverence. His face was a face of fear and respect. And he spoke and kept on speaking. And how did he do that, Brother Roger? Can you conjugate that word, wide the bar?
Okay, so it's third person masculine singular PL while consecutive imperfect. So
Okay.
when he spoke
With great power and force. God spoke to him with great power and force. With him, Etal, Elohim. This is the triune God. Spoke with him with great power and force. And by the way, those words of power and force are still in effect today. Because God said, I will make for myself sovereignly, I will make for myself a covenant with you, between you and me. God, and then saying, cal infinitive construct. Saying, lemor. Say that, lemor. Roll that R just a little bit. Ane hane berithi. Etak. Why hayita. Liav. Hamon. Goyim. I, ani. Behold, Hene, my covenant, the covenant of me, the covenant belonging to me. What is that? In what case is that, Brother Roger? We're talking about conjugating. Now we're talking about cases. What is my covenant? That's in what case? That's genitive. The genitive case. All right. With you. With you. That's instrumental case right there. That word with you, that's instrumental. Okay. And then, and you shall become, you shall have become. Second person masculine singular, cal, while consecutive perfect. This is what we call future perfect here. You shall have become for a father, the multitude, the many. This means a great crowd. Hamon, a great crowd. Hamon, of nations, a great crowd of nations. Now we know historically that Abraham, he had a Shemite wife, he had a Hamite wife, and he had a Japhethite wife. And he, if you trace your DNA, you will find out probably that you go back to the loins of Abram. Pamela, you're probably a son of Abraham. Marilyn, you are probably a son of Abraham. A daughter of Abraham. Roger, you can probably trace it back. Many people believe that Alexander the Great was a son or a descendant of Abraham through Keturah. The Arab races, the European races are all Japhethites, all through that lineage. The Greeks. What did the Greeks do? They perfected the most perfect language that's ever been written by man, the Greek language, which the New Testament is written in. All of this happened through Abraham. Abraham's descendants. Just think how great that was. I, behold, my covenant with you. I, and you shall have become for a father to a multitude of nations. All nations, many nations can trace their lineage right back to Abraham because he was a father of the Hamites, the Shemites, and the Japhethites. And there we are. Do you have any questions? Got any questions about this? Marilyn? Roger? Pamela?
I want to ask you about the Hebrew language that we're using. Is that used today?
The modern Hebrew is not this language.
Okay.
It's not the modern Hebrew does not have this grammar like this. Modern, what we call vernacular Hebrew is a little different. This is what we call common speech Hebrew. Now, Brother Roger, you've studied both of them, haven't you? They just don't get down the definitions of this, and they just it's there, but it's not there.
Well, is Yiddish what they use today?
Yiddish, Brother Hubbard used to say all modern Hebrew is Yiddish. What is Yiddish, Brother Roger?
That's a slang of Hebrew mixed with like Polish and German and Russian.
Yeah.
And, languages.
How do the modern Hebrews pronounce their words?
So,
Like German.
Yeah.
It comes from the Germans. That's where it comes from, the German. Gesenius, Hebrew grammar, will tell you that. That was written over 100 years ago. He said all modern pronunciation of the Hebrew comes from the German language, not from the Hebrew. It's different. The greatest grammarians were the Germans, and they wrote many of the grammar books. And even Davidson's Greek grammar is written from a pronunciation from the German in Greek. So we see that. Ice. There is no ice in ace, as they used to say. The Greeks, or the Germans, were pronounced epsilon, iota, sigma. They would pronounce it ice, which we would. That's where we get the same word ice from. But it's not ice, it's ace. The ypsilon, they say it's upsilon. They make the U they make the Greek U-looking thing, which is a Y sound, actually, into a U sound. Now, with the diphthongs, it becomes a U, but the ypsilon is an epsilon, not an upsilon. But that is from the German pronunciations. That's what you wanted to know, isn't it? Okay. Brother Roger, you got any questions? Any comments, Pamela? No? All right. Anybody else? Nobody. Okay. Well, we'll start at 17 and verse 5 next week, 17:5. We went from 16:14 to 17:4. All right, let's have a dismiss in prayer. Pamela, you want to dismiss us in prayer, please?